Hi everyone, welcome back to Difference Frames the World, a channel that offers a unique perspective. Please subscribe to our channel so you will not miss our daily uploads. Today we talk about Donald Trump, who is currently on a major tour of Asia, with stops in Malaysia, Japan, and South Korea, and tucked into all of that is what many consider the major headline, a face-to-face meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. According to the White House, that meeting is slated for October 30th or thereabouts on the sidelines of the APEC summit in South Korea. Major Western media outlets have been reporting the possible meeting of Xi Jinping and Donald Trump in South Korea for many days. Still, till October 24th, the Chinese authorities have not responded to related questioning of such a meeting between the two national leaders. The U.S. side is eager to meet the Chinese leader, while the Chinese side prefers to remain silent on the matter. It is important to note that the two countries are holding trade talks in Malaysia ahead of a potential meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. Li Feng, a member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Vice Premier of the State Council, is leading a delegation in Malaysia from October 24 to 27 for economic and trade consultations with U.S. representatives. The two sides are discussing key issues in their economic and trade relations, in accordance with the important consensus reached during earlier phone calls between the two heads of state this year. Although China has not officially confirmed that the two leaders, described as best friends with strong personal bonds, will meet in South Korea, Beijing says President Xi Jinping will attend the APEC 2025 summit. Even if the Chinese leader is reluctant to meet his U.S. counterpart, it is unlikely he would decline a meeting request from his so-called best friend. We believe President Xi Jinping is too polite to refuse a meeting with the U.S. president, although he knows the meeting will be fruitless, as the latter is well known for not keeping his word for more than 2 hours. Still, it is a big deal. It is the meeting of the two national leaders of the world's two largest economies, amid tensions over trade, technology, strategic supply chains, rare earth minerals, and security issues, such as Taiwan and Russia. Meeting like this, if it actually happens, carries a lot of weight. People are wondering what will be on the table for their discussion. Here's what folks are watching for. First, trade and tariffs. Trump has been talking big about getting a fantastic deal with China, which we discussed in a video published several days ago. He said he expects one when he meets Xi, but at the same time, he's been threatening to impose an additional 100% tariff on Chinese imports if a deal isn't reached. Second, supply chains and rare earths. One of the flashpoints is China's control over rare earth minerals and export licensing tied to them. Those are crucial for electronics, EV motors, and defense tech. The U.S. sees this as a vulnerability. Without China's rare earths, the U.S. military will not get enough weapons and fighter jets to flex its muscles around the world, particularly at China's doorstep. Third, fentanyl, agriculture, Russian oil. Trump plans to raise issues like China's role in the flow of fentanyl precursors, China's purchases of Russian oil, and whether China will buy America's agricultural produce. On October 14th, he threatened to ban imports of cooking oil from China after Beijing decided to stop purchasing soybeans from Washington. In September 2025, for the first time in 7 years, China did not buy any soybeans from the U.S. farmers. Fourth, geopolitical and security dimensions. Beyond trade, there's Taiwan, the broader U.S.-China strategic rivalry, tech export restrictions, and how each side views its global role. For example, whether China can push the U.S. into an unfavorable position on Taiwan or other security matters. To understand the importance of this meeting, a quick walk through the history is helpful. Under Donald Trump's first presidency, the U.S. and China signed what's called the Phase 1 deal, some structural promises from China, large purchase targets, etc. Many analysts say it was more of a pause button than a full reset. Between then and now, many things have changed. New technologies, new supply chain vulnerabilities, particularly around rare earths, Russia's war in Ukraine, China's increasing military power, and strategic ambitions, among others. In some areas, China has won the upper hand, and it is getting tougher than in previous times when the Chinese leader meets his U.S. counterparts, Trump and Biden. For instance, amid ongoing trade tensions, Beijing paused purchases of U.S. oilseed supplies several times. Yet, leading up to a meeting between Xi Jinping and then President Joe Biden, China made an unexpected purchase of 3 million metric tons, viewed as a positive gesture of goodwill. That surprising move showed Beijing's willingness to bridge gaps and foster cooperation, despite Joe Biden's reluctance to coexist with China. Compared to Joe Biden and all other former U.S. presidents, Donald Trump is more unpredictable, like a mischievous child rolling on the ground asking for candy. We don't know whether Beijing is willing to give him the same surprise as it did Joe Biden. It is still unclear whether the two leaders will meet as in early October, when Trump asserted that, because of Beijing's export policy, there's no need to meet President Xi Jinping. This time, the U.S. wants more from President Xi Jinping, but it is mission impossible if it is unwilling to compromise on key issues, like Taiwan. For example, Trump wants to reduce its dependence on China for critical minerals, but it takes years to build more resilient supply chains for the U.S. and its Western allies. Those structural issues, the ones behind the scenes, are now as important as the headlines. Meanwhile, China is pushing back, using export controls, licensing, and tech policy as tools of leverage. The rare earth story is central here. China threatens to restrict exports of certain minerals or the technology tied to them, giving Beijing strategic bargaining power. So, this meeting will take place in the context of high tensions and big structural shifts, with both sides wanting something. Still, it is not clear how far they're willing to compromise. Even if there is a meeting between two of them, it will more likely be an encounter than a formal arrangement. There may not be a formal signed deal, at least not a fantastic one for Donald Trump to boast about to his supporters. What's more likely, a statement of intention, a communique, maybe an agreement to further talks, maybe some specific deliverables such as Beijing's commitment to purchase U.S. goods or China loosening some restrictions. However, there's a catch. The meeting might not occur or could be reduced in size, although the likelihood is minimal. Beijing may not publicly reject Washington by snubbing Trump, but it is also unwilling to meet his expectations. The world is expecting something concrete from the meeting, say, China commits to buying more U.S. goods, eases export controls on rare earths, or the U.S. eases some tariffs, which could ease some pressure on global supply chains, reduce costs, and stabilize markets. However, if the meeting instead collapses or yields little, the risk is that tensions flare. Tariffs rise, supply chains are further disrupted, companies face uncertainty, and we may face a tough time like the Great Recession. Consumers might not see immediate changes, but higher input costs in tech, EVs, electronics, and other sectors could ripple through prices. On the strategic front, this meeting signals how the U.S. and China will handle their rivalry. A successful meeting could signal a willingness to engage. A failed one could underscore deep divisions and heighten concerns about decoupling. For other countries, how the U.S. and China engage affects their trade and investment environments, their own supply chain policies, and their positioning in the world. Here are some clues we should keep an eye on. Will the U.S. and China publish a joint statement or at least a summary of the discussion? If they will, what commitments are made and how specific are those promises? Does the U.S. go ahead with its threatened 100% tariff on Chinese goods if no deal is reached? Does China relax export controls or buy more from the U.S.? Are there announcements around rare earths, supply chain partnerships, or export licensing changes? One of the long-standing issues is China's buying of U.S. goods such as agriculture, energy, and manufacturing, which Donald Trump is more interested in than others as a businessman. If China says yes, then what are the numbers and timelines? Do the leaders talk about Taiwan, Russian oil, technology exports, or do they merely stay on trade? Even if all answers to the above questions are positive, what matters is implementation. So after this, are there ministerial talks, working groups, follow-up meetings? The upcoming meeting at the APEC summit is not just a photo op or diplomatic handshake. It's a potentially pivotal moment in U.S.-China relations, encapsulating trade, technology, supply chains, security, and global economic stability. The backdrop is one of high tension: tariffs, rare earths, export controls, strategic rivalry. The stakes are high. A meaningful deal could ease pressure. Failure could deepen fractures. So yes, when you hear Trump meets Xi in South Korea, You can think of it as a summit not just between two presidents, but as a negotiation about major structural issues for the 21st century economy. While neither side is likely to achieve everything in one meeting, how they handle this one may tell us a lot about what comes next.